Yo, what's up guys? Some more Etheria restart news. We only have 3 days left on the clock before the official launch. I'm of course going to be streaming it. First link in the description is going to be the Twitch channel where I will be streaming it. But first of all, we're going to be talking about some of the buffs, nerfs, and new units that they're going to be including. They finally added back Hoyan, which was my favorite unit, just by look, skin, everything like that. In the first iteration that I played the game in the beta, it's going to be back, but is she going to be good enough? We're not really sure. Also, there's going to be some buffs and nerfs. It might actually change it where you go for your first selection unit. So first of all, Mio was already showcased. It's going to be a super strong unit. There's a lot of cool stuff to her. But from what I've heard, she's not going to be in the banner right away. She's not right away being summonable. We are not 100% sure if that is going to be the case because things in here are still subject to change. So you have to keep that in mind. Her kit is really strong. If you haven't seen her yet, it's pretty much a Kraken in combination with a Marvel, but then it's a light 5-star. So definitely one of those more rare units, though, that also makes the pool of 5 stars to 6 rather than it was 5 before. So the odds of pulling one, if you go for rerolling, is going to be a little bit lower. Or the odds of pulling one is going to be a little bit lower in the first place. So that is that. Then we also do have the other unit, which is going to be going for a strip, so a dispel, which is definitely an interesting one right there. I am not sure if they already mentioned which element she will be, because currently we're kind of missing a normal elemental proper strip for Terramatan. Sure, you could use a Mia, the healer, but then again, is that the best option for Terramatan? I would say it's actually a decent option, but you would have to outspeed Terramatan, so nothing is actually on anything of lower HP, so therefore she actually goes for proper heal, which is a little bit more annoying. For Aurora, you can use Viper, it's the fine element on that. But otherwise, you're kind of bound to having to have a Heinrich, which is the one that would make it work. But in that case, maybe she can replace that for Terramatan on Inferno, because Inferno is the only one that has immunity on the start of the wave. Then we do have the Union guild for guild kind of stuff in there. We have seen it in a bunch of games already. I think Etheria Restart is just trying to do the same thing that other games such as this also do have, which I think is a good thing. It's always good to have guild stuff. In Summoners War, it's still pretty active. I wonder how much time investment it would be to look at the map. When can you do your hits and how tryhard that would be? Because I do know for Summoners War, I'm currently in the rank 1 guild in the Europe server. And especially the leads do have a very active role in saying like, okay, now we have to hit this tower, now we have to hit that tower and kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see how that will work in this game because as seen before, it's pretty much just like, okay, these are the kind of towers you hit. There's certain defense on it. The moment you take over all of the defenses, that's where you clear that. Maybe they're also going to be doing something as that you can only have towers where the maximum that you can use is an SR rather than an SSR. So that would also make it that some SSR or that some SRs have more value because you just simply have to start building those as well. Then we also have the Shell Story, which is going to be the new event. Just a pretty simple board event. You probably get some dice, you throw a dice, you hop on the board. Simple as that, simple events. Always nice to just get a bunch of free stuff in there. And I think most of the events are kind of like that. So then we also have a few changes. As mentioned before, we have the limited summon from or the limited summon or any of the summons that was a pool on 100, now down to a pool of an 80. There's also a thing where it is possible for people to have rather buy something in game and they have to buy it multiple times, that they can buy it on the website and then have like kind of like coupons-ish and then use that to do that. I guess that's kind of a thing as well. It is not that bad, but is it definitely not that great? I'm not 100% sure. It's definitely helping out the whales to wheel faster. That's the main thing, I think, for free-to-play players. They would have wheeled anyway, so it doesn't really change it. Also, the first 15 days in the Summit Arena, which is actually pretty long, you're going to be just in the same region. I think they could have done 1 week, and the main reason that they did this is because in the first week, especially the first few days, some servers have a faster reset than another server. I think the 15 days is probably just the first season, like it's the season 0 or something. So maybe that's why they do that before you go into queuing into everyone in the whole world. But with that, it actually does make sense where that not one player is already using 1,000 more energy than the other player because it already got the day reset. Because the day reset, especially the first week, is very impactful. Also, they added in that if both players are above Diamond 1, that you enable pre-banning. So it's 1 pre-ban and a ban protection. So that's also how we played the tournaments. Actually, in the tournaments, we had 2 pre-bans. I think they will get to that point at some point, but at first, like, you actually have to get a decent amount of units. With the pre-ban, you can kind of know what other people used in the past. When you see the pre-ban, you're like, okay, I know this person uses this and this, especially in the Diamond Plus ranks. You maybe see people more often. And you have the ban protection. So anything that you're locking in the third slot will be banned as well, which is definitely a cool strategy. Then a few other changes as well, mainly just like UI changes or small changes for regions or things like that. Some skin changes, so definitely all good like that. Then we're looking at some of the balance changes. So the first balance change that's really good is that a ascending to 5-star and 6-star will give you extra speed, so therefore also making your things 6-star has more value. So if you want to use anything in RTA, 6-starring is very important. Plus, if you 6-star something, it's also a lot easier to outspeed any of the dungeons. You have to have a pretty decent amount of speed if you want to start outspeeding Inferno stages. So for that, it definitely helps out a lot. So then we're looking at buffs and nerfs. It's a little interesting that they went for red is an improvement, and further down the line, we have green is a lowering. So for that reason, let's see what we have. So Close, first of all, is going a little bit up in damage. Close was actually mentioned on the Prywin as having the highest damage output in a long, prolonged out fight sustaining damage dealer, which is definitely an interesting one right there to have a little bit more damage. PvP, I don't really feel his vibe still, but PvE is probably one of the highest single target damage dealers over a long prolonged of time. So against the Union boss, I think he has the highest damage output out there. But it is interesting to see that he gets a little bit of an update on that one. I still don't really think it's a kind of unit personally I would go for. Veronica actually makes a really good comeback, so it's still an 80% of a steal, but before it was 100% steal. But as mentioned before, if you have higher accuracy than the enemy of resistance, you can double this number. So of course 100 is the max for the activation, but you can make this activation go upwards to 100. Still, there is a innate check of 10% that you can fill regardless of the accuracy or resistance on that. Also, if they have way more resistance, this goes down to 40. But a 80 chance definitely is nice, but the main thing that is changed is the 50 to 100 chance to spread. So before, it was like you steal buffs and then you spread half. Or maybe none, or maybe all. It's really ass. No one likes it. So they actually made it back to 100%. And Veronica was actually one of my top tier units for the tournaments when I was playing on the balance patch that was just before the last beta. So definitely a unit that becomes very interesting once again. Because let's say a Messiah uses the invisibility on self. You steal the Messiah on the invisibility, you give invisibility to the whole team. Or even you start stripping things such as the Will Prayer from a Ling Lo. You start having like, oh, I had no healer. Now Ling Lo of the enemy team becomes my healer. I had tournament matches like that. It's really good. So definitely good to see Veronica being back and being strong like that. Mia was the unit as a red 5-star, so red SSR. We're going 1 cooldown reduce on the S2. Okay, that's fine. Healing a little bit improved. Okay, that's fine. Wasn't using her all too much, but I think she was decent in the first place. Then we have Shiada. Was one of those units I didn't really like too much. It took too long to stack. But then again, a little bit of a damage increase might be a little bit of an edge on her. But to be honest, I still don't really get her vibe too much in the early game. I haven't really seen anyone use this in any of the tournaments or any of the betas, to be honest. Tiamat is actually taking a pretty substantial nerf. So recovering goes from 30% to 10% of our max HP. And for Bloodbath stats, increase healing received by, okay, so that's also going down as well. It is definitely, I'm not sure, like this 30 to 10% definitely makes her a healing down by a decent substantial amount. But does she become more of like a focus on like, oh, it has to be a damage dealer rather than a support unit? The shield is definitely still there. So yeah, it's definitely, she needs more support right now because of her recovery. Because normally she goes into the ultimate form, she heals a good portion, and then she starts taking a turn. But now she just heals a little bit. And also the increased healing received is also slightly down by the bloodbath. So she needs more support to do good, but I still think she would do good. We actually have a buff on Rahul. Rahul was already a super strong unit, so it's just simple more damage on the skill 1. It's about 10% increase right there. But we have each stack, it's going for a 4 to a 5, maximum of 12 stacks. Cannot be dispelled. Wrath form is over a long duration of a match, an incredibly strong passive right there. It just makes to do so much damage. Also really good unit for a whole bunch of places where you just have a longer match, union bosses, all of those things, but also a long RTA match. He does a lot of damage. But also over here, we do have the basic and damage output goes up from... So you have more chance of stacking extra defense, your defense scaling, and then also you get extra damage in there. Rahu is definitely really strong, so interesting to see right there. Also, we do have has a chance... Okay, the purifying chance of the Linglo goes up. I like that. I don't really like things that have like low odds of working, like 65% chance to purify. Not really. I just and also to apply the will prayer. Now it's like 75. It's not 100, but it's definitely a little bit better. Rosa, also something that a lot of people were focusing on, is like, hey, is that going to be my selection banner? And I'll talk about which selection banner I might go for after this idea, or just do that in a different video. But we have a slight bit of a nerf on the skill 1 of Rosa for the turn meter pushback from 10% to 8%. It's a very minor change. It doesn't change that much, in no honesty. We have Born passive. It's actually going to go for more attack scaling or more HP from his attack scaling. So he's going to be even beefier. And then we also have more damage on the skill 3, which was already a pretty hefty hit. So definitely an interesting unit right there, the Born. I think he's pretty strong. We also have more damage by a good substantial amount on Lilith. Lilith wasn't the most insane amount of damage, but definitely a decent insane damage dealer. So let's see what we have over here on the close. Okay, so it's a little bit strange. Mostly the red ones are the ones that are buffs rather than nerfs. But in this case, the red ones are the things we remove. So we remove the speed lowered by 20% and the speed lowered by 4%. But we actually put a speed down in the skill 3 itself, which definitely is an interesting one to have a defense break plus a speed down in the skill 3. So I think it's a little bit of a buff, a little bit of a nerf, but in the end, kind of same. Freya's actually been nerfed, which is an interesting one, which actually makes her a bit weaker. There's a 70% chance to push back rather than it being a 100% activation before. Definitely an interesting one on that, where it is a bit worse by a long shot. Then we go for the SRs. I think that down from here, it's just SRs as I see the name. So first of all, we have the Turn Dot. It's an interesting unit, but taking a little bit of a nerf. Wasn't really saying that it would be too strong, but the skill 2 that normally goes for strip now has a little bit of a lower chance of a turn meter pushback. We have some improvements to Shiaki. Let's see which Shiaki this is. This is, I think, the fire one. Yeah, looks like the fire one, which is the healer. So in this case, it's just applying more heals by a substantial amount. So if you're looking for an SR healer and your Sanya might be not pulled, I think a Shiaki, the fire one, or well, the red element one, might actually be a decent one over there. Diana is actually taking some nerfs, and mainly on her turn meter steal, so just a little bit down on that. Not the worst. I think she was a pretty good unit altogether, but definitely not the worst. Kraken is taking a pretty substantial nerf, so we have a 75% chance to a 65, and we have a 60 to a 50. Keep in mind that if you have enough accuracy, you can still make 50 into 100, because 50 is the edge that you can double to 100. 65 as well, so it's definitely a good amount less, but you can still make him 100, but you just have to focus more into accuracy on that unit. So definitely one over there. We do also have Sanya, which does make a lot of sense to have that one nerfed, because Sanya was by far one of the highest contested units, even in the tournaments where everyone has like maxed out accounts and everything. Sanya is incredibly strong, so a little bit down on the healing, on both sides, for the healing increase and for the healing itself. But also fix an issue where it could still trigger a healing passive under stun. Ooh, that's also strong, because before, even if you were stunned or frozen or anything like that, she was still healing. No one really cared. So now you actually have more value to put an alicorn on her, which does actually is the shell that gives her a cleanse, and therefore she can go for the heal. Whereas right now, you just give a gigabyte to it, she takes every other turn, and then she just heals whatever she's stunned or not. So definitely this change is probably even bigger than this change, but definitely two really big changes to that as well. Marvel, we have a, okay, we go for a chance to steal turn meter on the skill 1. That's actually a big nerf. Like going from 50 to 40 makes you 100% potential to an 80% potential. That's a really big nerf. Also, the 25 to a 15 is really big as well. So let's see what we have over here. We do have the turn meter or the skill cooldown on the skill 3, also 1 up. So Marvel's definitely taking a really big hit on both the skill 1, but also the skill 3 doubled. So I still think a really strong unit, but not as crazy impactful as it was before. Then we have Victor taking some less damage. Yeah, the 15% damage for every HP, 10% HP loss was a lot, so 9 is definitely fair. In this case, we do also have, okay, we cannot stack multiple shields. Okay, that's fine. Dorothy, what do we have? Fixed an issue, not casting a skill in auto battle, totally fine. Number 41 was actually used a lot as well. Turn meter increased from 35 to just 20, which is definitely a lot worse for just straight up free-to-play. Because free-to-play is maybe like you don't have the units to actually do her job, so you just use her for that. But then again, there's definitely a bunch of options that you could use for. Then we also do have some shell adjustments, because of course, that's also a thing. First of all, White Fang is going from 140 to 110, which kind of makes sense because it was just simply doing a lot of damage. The shell was doing as much damage as the full hit of one of those characters in most cases. Then we have the Artisan, which is the defense one, which is mostly used on Brahul, which is slightly down on this for the shield. Makes sense. We have the Codex of Magic actually being cannot have their skill cooldown reduced. That does make a lot of sense because there is a way where you can go with Lily to make a Marvel use the skill 4 or the skill 3 4 times in a row. Because you start off with a skill 2 on the Lily, you do a skill 3 on the Marvel, then you have the Codex, you do another skill 3 on the Marvel, then you go for the skill 3 on the Lily, which resets the Codex and resets the cooldown. So therefore you can go for a Marvel, another skill 3 into another skill 3. So you can get 4 skill 3s off on a side character with Lily, because Lily was also resetting the Codex of Magic. In this case, Codex of Magic is not gonna get a reset, but you can still get 3 skills off with the Lily, which definitely is pretty strong as well. Amber also is not able to get that reset anymore. Okay, we have a... Yep, I definitely do notice that Halloween at some point was just... It felt like it was never really activating, but now it's activating a bit as well. We have the Twilight Knight, which is pretty much a similar one to White Fang, only a little bit earlier game. That is also doing a little bit less damage. That makes sense. Diamond Heart is the one that is the similar one to this one, which also takes a little bit less of a defense. So that definitely does make a lot of sense. There's one part that's pretty interesting though, because I've seen some people make videos about this a few hours ago and they were looking at it, but scrolling through this whole thing, there's nothing about Ho-Yan. Whereas here on the Sean B video, we can clearly see that there was a different point in this notice, which was showcasing about Ho-Yan, but also a different character than is Ho-Yan. So they already removed this part. So are they going to be removing my favorite unit once again? Because I have no clue. Maybe they got some feedback on this and they were like, oh, this is not really what we're expecting to do with it. But they are going to be probably adding in Alden as well, which is a new character. And then Ho-Yan back at it, maybe change. We don't really know. But interesting to see that they put that in there, but they already removed it once again as well. Because that part should be somewhere along these lines before the balancing changes are mentioned. But for the life of me, I can't find it. So interesting to see that they did already remove something like that. Maybe it's something that is going to be released later. I don't know. Then we also have a few extra changes of just, okay, these are just like some UI changes, nothing too interesting. This one as well, few UI changes. Did they have any proper changes in here? Which I would say is like, okay, this makes a lot of sense towards what you're actually doing. Because a lot of this is more of like just like, oh, we changed some numbers, we changed some UIs. It's just UIs, bunch of fixes, bunch of this, bunch of that. And it's mainly just a whole bunch of fixes. Good amount of fixes though. So maybe one of the bugs that you have noticed are in here at this moment as well. But definitely it's very nice to see where they do go pretty hard on some of the balance changes as well. But then the big question is Tiamat still the to-go unit for everyone's selection banner? Well, to be honest, I'm going to be making a video about what I will do for my units in my first few days, I am not going to be doing the selection banner until like a week or maybe even 2 weeks in, because that's where I can make a cohesive team rather than going for like, oh, this is a good unit. Because you're going to be pulling something anyways. I'm going for re-rolling. I most likely will re-roll for either Lily or Heinrich. Hopefully both, but I would say I'm actually leaning more towards Heinrich once again. I was using him in the last beta and he was actually just doing an incredible amount of work. However, it does also kind of depend what this stripper is looking like. If she does a good dispel kind of vibe thing, then she could maybe be the replacement of Heinrich in certain stages, which does make it more interesting to go for a Lily once again. So those are kind of the things that I'm a little bit in between about. I will be doing re-rolling, so my selection banner, I most likely won't be picking it up until a week into the game. However, as mentioned, I will be doing a future video either tomorrow or the day after what my plan is for the first few days. I will be streaming the first few days, pretty much the whole day, so I'm expecting like 10-hour streams, maybe longer, especially on the first day with the re-rolling and then also doing all of the stuff for the first day. I will also try to make videos on that if you just want to have a shorter recap of what I did that day. Well, guys, thanks a lot for watching for this one. Hope to see you in the next one. See you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.